What's up, guys? It's Showtime's platform. I'm your boy, Josh Showtime. Make sure you follow me on all social medias at Papa Showtime or Josh Showtime. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Make sure you comment. Now, today's conversation is going to be about the Hall of Fame, the UFC Hall of Fame, okay? Now, let me just go ahead and first say that I think that the way the UFC has their Hall of Fame, I love the fact that they have it. I like to have a wing for fights, and they also got fighters. But I do have a bit of an issue with it per se, because they don't have like a standardized, like, you know, you have to be retired for a certain length, and, you know, we're just gonna let you guys in. Like, for instance, Habib should not be in the Hall of Fame right now. That's not saying that I don't think he's a Hall of Fame fighter. Ridiculous. He's clearly a Hall of Fame fighter. However, he just retired like 3 years ago. That's way too soon. And we already know how fighters are, how fickle fighters are. Fighters come out of retirement every single year, man. Like, it doesn't, you know, not to say that Habib will come out of retirement, but you gotta let it breathe just a little bit more. But yet and still, you know, they have this Hall of Fame, and there's some fighters that are in there that I personally don't necessarily know I would put in there, but this conversation is not really about that. This conversation is about the fighters who have retired this year, or either they retired or they're not in the UFC any longer, and it's, are they Hall of Famers? Hall of Very Good? I don't know. And let me just let you guys know this right now. When it comes to Hall of Fame, period, any sport, I'm a stickler, man. I'm not letting anybody in. I do think that there's a lot of quality guys, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be the Hall of Fame, which means the best of the best. And, you know, I feel like sometimes these sports organizations, they just meet a quota. And I'm mainly talking, well, no, basketball's the same. I feel like that's mainly with football, where football's like, you know, they're starting to let guys in who are good players, but they weren't really the best at their position. They were one of the best. When I say one of the best, maybe like one of the 10 best in their era, but I don't think that it should belong for one of the 10 best. I think it should be belonging to maybe the 5 best, the 3 best, like the elite of the elite, changing the game, things like that. So I had to bring that same exact thing with fighting. So unfortunately, if you were not a champion, I personally cannot put you on there. Now listen, people are gonna just say, oh, that's not fair, this, that, and third happen if it's like an Anderson Silva, this, that, and third. Listen, I get it. And you know what? And I'm not even gonna sit here and say, you know, if you weren't necessarily a champion. However, I will say you have to at least be a competitive, like, let's say there was a long range, like if John Jones is in your gym, you're not winning the belt at 205. It's just like unfortunately you have to win it like DC did when he, you know, got it stripped. Like Anderson Silva in his prime, you weren't winning his belt. So you know what? I'm gonna cancel that and not say that anybody who doesn't have a belt. I'm gonna sit here and say, if you were one, you have to at least have a belt, or you have to challenge for a belt and at least get close to winning. You can't be outclassed. If you get outclassed, that just means that these guys are just levels above you. I'm sorry, you gotta be somewhat competitive. So, you know, and then obviously then after that it goes with the records and how good you were for how long you were, things of that nature. So like obviously we have and let me also put this out there, just because you won a belt don't mean you're a Hall of Famer either. I mean, flukes do happen, unfortunately, and I'm not gonna just give you one just because, oh, you were the best, because you beat this guy at this point in time, but you also lost your belt literally the next fight and you weren't even close afterward. So that's like a person like a Matt Serra, things like that. Great fighter, Hall of Famer, hell no. So let's bring these guys into the fold, all right? So the first person that I can think of that retired and no longer fighting is Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Now, I feel like it's pretty obvious and pretty easy to say that she will be a Hall of Famer. She deserves to be a Hall of Famer. I honestly believe that all 4 of these people that are retired that I'm bringing up will be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think everybody deserves it though. Joanna, easily. I mean, she wasn't the first 115-pound champion, but in reality, she was the long-standing 115. When you think 115, you think of Joanna. Joanna is, most people believe, the greatest 115-pounder of all time. I personally think Rose is the best. However, I understand giving Joanna she's the best. At the end of the day, she beat everybody except for Rose, and pretty dominantly as well. Amazing takedown defense. She's very similar to a Jose if you really want to think about it, whereas in like, she's not a wrestler, but she adapted her game so easily, and to the point that really no one could take her down and keep her down. And the person that did was Valentina, who was a weight class bigger than her. Outside of that, nobody could really just keep this woman down. She was that good. So, and we already know when it comes to striking, she could beat anybody. She beat everybody except for obviously Rose and then Wei Ling. So yeah, easy Hall of Famer. I mean, she has so many records, so many daggone like amazing fights. The fight with her and Weili is the greatest women's fight I've ever seen in my life. And in reality, it's one of the greatest fights, period. Like, if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Amazing. So I think, without being said, that is super easy. I'm gonna go with another person that is super easy, and it's a person who just retired, Jose Aldo. We already know, this shouldn't even have to be stated. Jose is top 5 greatest MMA fighters of all time. He's in my top 5, easily. As long as Jose's been relevant in the fight game and how good he's been for as long, it's unheard of. I mean, I really can't think of somebody who has such good longevity in such a deep weight class. Like, you have a Randy Couture who was still relevant towards his mid-40s, which is something to be commendable, but at the same time, that was heavyweight. Heavyweight talent it's always been lacking. It's never been really like super deep. Whereas, you gotta think, Jose has been in the game 17 daggone years for real, at the top. And this man has been fighting dog after dog after dog. I mean, I'm super sad that he's retired. I do think it's the right time. The guy's resume is phenomenal. He's fought everybody at 145 and 135 that we wanted, except for Dominic Cruz. And I just can't believe that somebody can have such an amazing career. This is a guy who went through regular UFC testing and went all the way to USADA, when everybody who sit here and say, well, such and such hasn't been good since USADA. Such and such fell off after USADA. They must have been on the drugs. Jose is the one guy who survived both tests and has been elite through both tests. So unless he's been like getting the upper echelon of steroids, which I don't believe, this guy has been a clean fighter and has still been great. Athleticism is crazy. He has the best takedown defense I've ever seen. I've never seen a person, especially for a guy who never wrestled. I've never seen somebody who's so easily adapted to the wrestling game. And this is, once again, he fight at 145, 135. There's nothing but phenomenal wrestlers. Chad Mendez is a D1 All-American. He came in second in national championship. This guy can take down anybody. Oh, he had issues with Jose. He took him down. Guess what happened? He got right back up. So hips are unbelievable. Quick twitches is crazy. Power is ridiculous. I mean, the guy really didn't have too many flaws in his game. The biggest one might have been his cardio. That was it. Everything else, this guy was good. And then you think of the fact that he did what warriors and what champions do. He got knocked out by Conor. Very embarrassing knockout. It was a very sad knockout. And I honestly think the UFC did him really wrong by never ever giving him that match again. However, he lost, and guess what? He still thrived afterwards, won his belt back, and then somehow went to 135, which was ridiculous. Nobody believed he could do that. Everybody thought, if anything, he would go to 155 because he had a trouble making 145, which still is kind of confusing. I would love to hear him explain how he was able to do that, why he wasn't able to make 145 at one point. Like, he was struggling to make it at least. But yet still made it to 135 and then still was able to be good enough to fight for a championship. And honestly made another run this time. So, I mean, the guy is just, I mean, it's, like I said, top 5 ever, the greatest featherweight of all time. I don't know why people, like everybody wanted to hop on Joe Rogan and say everything he says, which was that Max was the greatest featherweight of all time. Hell no. Like, come on, man. One, he fought past his prime, Jose, and yes, he beat Jose, but congratulations. He has nowhere near the accolades that a Jose has accomplished. And he obviously has got beaten in his prime versus Volk. And even Volk acknowledges that Jose is the greatest right now. Volk has an opportunity to surpass him, but as of right now, it is Jose, and I don't think it's that close right now. So yeah, easy Hall of Famer. He's first ballot if you ever want to do this in MMA. First ballot MMA and UFC, it don't matter. Now, the next two are going to be, in my opinion, controversial. Now, I'm going to go first with Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is no longer in the UFC. He said he might come back, but as of right now, we're going to use it as he's not coming back. He's retired from the UFC. Is he a Hall of Famer? In my opinion, no. I'm not putting Nate Diaz in the Hall of Fame. I'm putting his fight with Conor in the Hall of Fame. I'm not putting him in the Hall of Famer. And here's the reason why. Record-wise, it's pretty average. It's nothing extraordinary. It's nothing great. Now, if you look at some of the names on his resume, he has some solid names. He has Donald Cerrone. He has Michael Johnson. Like, he has Anthony Pettis. He has some good fighters on his resume. Now, my issue is, one, he's never been champion. Two, when he did fight for the belt, he got whooped pretty badly. And then my issue as well is that when he went against some of the best, he got beat pretty badly, and it wasn't that close, particularly. But 170, I've already said it. 170, he is an average fighter. He's very bottom of the barrel, if anything. He's not good at 170. Yes, he just beat Tony Ferguson. Tony's washed too, and he's also not a 170 pounder. But anytime he fought a real 170 pounder, he normally lost, and he kind of got beat on. Now, 155, that's where I considered him to be a really good fighter. That's where he could be a Hall of Famer. However, I've seen way too many fights where he's gotten picked apart pretty easily. When he went against RDA, that was brutal. I didn't even want to see that fight no more. He got his legs chopped into pieces. Then, obviously, when he did fight for the belt against Benson, Benson beat the hell out of him. And listen, Benson almost got a finish, and Benson ain't really much of a finisher. And he beat him to the point that it was like, yeah, Nate wasn't ready for this. So, I mean, it's hard for me to sit here and give him that big of a case outside of his star and his popularity, which is the reason, you know, maybe you could say he changed the game of MMA a little bit. However, I just think that he's in the Hall of very, very good. I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame. Next person is gonna be Donald Cerrone. And unfortunately, he's gonna have the same exact answer. No, and I think Nate has a better case than Donald. Obviously, they fought in their prime and Nate beat the brakes off of him. However, Donald has a lot of records. And that's the one thing that Nate really doesn't have. Nate doesn't have as many records as Donald does. Donald has fought. He's near the top, if he's not at the top, of most wins, most finishes. Like, I mean, the guy fought every other week. I mean, there's so much that he has done part of the game. Both these guys are really, really good fighters. They really didn't have too many holes, but they did have holes that were exploited. Donald, I mean, it sucks to say, because once again, he's a very good fighter, but when he fought the best, he got beat pretty badly and pretty easily. I mean, at one point, it looked like he was a choke artist. I mean, anytime he fought or he was close to a title shot, he would get knocked out or he would get submitted or something. It would be something bad. So I don't think I personally would never put him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I may put a fight that he's had, but I'm sorry, he didn't do anywhere near enough for me to put him in the Hall of Fame. And he wasn't even close to sniffing a championship. That's just, honestly, that's just a fact. Even with the resurgence at 170, he eventually got whooped pretty badly. Then he went back to 155 and he just became a corpse, and he just started getting knocked out every fight, basically. So good fighters. Unfortunately, I wouldn't put them there. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. Out of the four, who do you think are Hall of Famers? And in reality, we know the other two are Hall of Famers. But if you think Nate Diaz is a Hall of Famer, please explain why. I'm all open to ears. Donald, like I said, you're going to have a really hard time convincing me, but I would love to hear as well. But as always, man, this is Showtime Fight Forum, where we talk all things fights. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. And thank you for watching. Be blessed.